ham radio YouTube nerds. It's Max NG7M, and I've got my DB18 tilted over today, doing some maintenance on the DB18. I think I've got a problem with the main center EHU, but it's been 2.5 years, and so I thought I'd give a little video and show you what the painted elements look like. If you go back on my channel, you can find some videos where I painted all the elements, and man, they still look great. And so this is Utah weather. It's January 17th, I think it is, 18th. I should have looked. Anyway, it's Saturday, and it's the NAQP SSB is today, but I won't be playing in that today unless I get this thing back up. I might hand out some cues from Utah tomorrow. Anyway, the painted elements just look great still. So, you know, they made it through a couple of Utah summers. It gets pretty hot, you know, the usual bird doo-doo and everything there. And then, of course, I had videos showing the tilt plate, and so you can kind of see the condition of the tilt plate. And I actually have a replacement EHU here. I'm suspecting something's wrong here. One of the tapes, the beryllium tapes, is not working right or is bundled up somewhere. And this is a DB18, of course, not the DB18E, so I just have the two trombones. Anyway, that kind of gives you an idea of what the elements look like. I think that'll focus and kind of see what it's looking like there. And we get some hawks and typical birds up there perching and having a good time on the top of the antenna at 80 feet. So I'll pull the fiberglass tubes off that main element and see what the deal is, and worst case I put in the new EHU I bought, and then I'll have a backup here. So that was the plan. If you're gonna buy one of these SteppIR antennas, obviously they're complex. When they work, they're great, and you just need to expect some maintenance on these because lots of moving parts, and it's well worth it. The guys that are, you know, once you get used to these, it's tough to go to anything else. But anyway, here's my setup. You can compare it to the video from 2.5 years ago. There's a thrust bearing, and on my standoff, just kind of walk on this side because the sun's south of me on my back. There's the Orion 2800. It's been a great rotor. I've got the N7M's clamp in there, which has been great, never slipped. And a KF7P standoff arms. Coax is looking good. This is an LM470 crank up, of course. You can see it's got the factory positive pull down. I would never do a crank up without positive pull down. It's my opinion. I think you're crazy to slap on a non-positive pull down winch, but that's my opinion. To each his own. And you know, the beautiful thing about this whole setup is I was able to bring this down, tilt it over, do all the maintenance, all as a one-man show. And you know, with a manual tilt over winch. So that gives you an idea of the tower. Had great support from Tashan. The tilt over mechanism was brand new, and I bought the tower itself used. Brought it back from a Visalia trip 3 years ago. Going on 3 years ago rather. So anyway, I thought it would be fun to kind of take a look after 2.5 years so you could see what's going on. And the tilt plate has been a godsend, obviously. You know, there's no way you're going to do this on your own, really, or very difficult. It'd be climbing a crank up tower is not a good idea. So that's pretty much it for now. If I see anything interesting in the EHU, I'll put that on this same video. So bye for now. This is day 2. I actually replaced the EHU yesterday, which I didn't think it was a problem after pulling the fiberglass tubes off and testing. The element tapes, the beryllium tapes, are working just fine. But I pulled off the EHU, and the bound looked fine. I mean, there was a teeny tiny bit of heat maybe on some of the, you know, the cloth, the wrapping on the ferrite, but I mean, it was fine. But I figured, hey, while I've got it off, I'll put the refurbished one on, which I did, and the problem persists. I looked at the coax switch, and of course this DB18 and the DB18E are one of the more complicated antennas because any element can be a driver. So the coax switching here, right, it switches the feed line from multiple elements, right? You can select the main, you know, on 20 through 6, you're going to be selecting the main driven element here in the middle. Otherwise, you're going to be selecting one end or the other, depending on if the beam's reversed or bidirectional mode, etc. And it's even a little bit different on the DB18E with the trombone in the middle, which this is not. This is just the regular DB18. So, you know, I've checked and double checked and triple checked, and you know, everything looks good on all the control wires, so it's still a little bit of a mystery. The resistance at the base of the tower on the junction box, so you got a clear coax feed line all the way to the the coax fed right to the coax switch, is showing 0.6 ohms. There's not, you know, like a high resistance there or anything. So I actually have a replacement PCB for the coax switch, and I'm going to replace that. And then I'm also suspecting this is the third output right here, the one that's away from the boom, the way I have the box mounted. And well, no, I guess I've got that backwards. It's this one right here. This is the third one. So the input is here, and with the sun this morning, input, and this is the third output, and that's if the relays are not energized. Then the output goes, you know, over here to the main, well, what I'm calling the main EHU. It's just a short jumper right over to here. And so, of course, I had replaced this yesterday. I'd taken this off because I replaced the EHU. So it's all shiny and pretty without any bird droppings on it. So this could be suspect, right? The connectors here could be suspect, which I'll check. And I had replaced, I didn't use the coax that came with the antenna. I used higher quality coax and amphenol connectors. They were crimpers. I'll just double check those and make sure they look okay. And it's just curious, right? I can't get a decent match on 20 meters. I went on 20 meters. I retracted the reflector and director elements all the way to the center, right? Because they're just parasitic, and I still couldn't get a match on 20 meters. That might be by design, though. It may require the parasitic elements, because I can get a closer match on the higher bands, which then implies that the connection to the center EHU isn't bad. So I'm just a little frustrated here. So we'll see what's going on. I know power is getting to the relays for switching the driven element to either end, right when you're on 30 or 40 meters. 40 meters in particular, because then you can switch the directions on this particular antenna. So that's a bit of a mystery. So I can't think of anything else it would be other than the you know, something funky with the relays in the coax PCB at rest when they're not energized. If something's wrong there, like one of them is still shorted out. So I've got to rip all this, you know, I've got to take all of my, you know, everything here. It's just a pain, right? And then I'm going to replace the coax relay regardless now at this point, because I have a new one, right? It's nice to have some backup components with these SteppIR antennas. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. Guys complain that they have problems with them, but I don't know what they expect after being up in the air for years. And, you know, I've heard of guys that have had them up for 10 years with no problems. And then, you know, in my case, it's been 2.5 years, and none of the EHU, as far as the element tapes, the beryllium tapes, moving, or the SteppIR motors, they've been rock solid. Anyway, bit of rambling as usual here. I'll get the coax switch replaced, and we'll kind of go from there. All right, next video coming up here, we'll see what happens. All right, I think this will be the final footage here. Problem solved. I'm back in business, and still a little bit of a conundrum here. It was either the coax relay switching PCB or the patch cable between the coax switch and the EHU. So my initial idea was the EHU. So I ended up replacing the EHU, which I didn't need to do, but now I have a backup one. This is actually a refurbished one, so you save quite a bit. And it may have been either a combination of or a problem with this jumper right here. And I have amphenol crimp-on connectors. And before I put it all together, I re-hit all the center conductors and made sure the solder was good and crimped. I mean, I crimped and resoldered in effect that center conductor. So some guys may argue against crimping and or against solder, but I do both. And all the other connectors look good. And this go around too, the other thing I was surprised when I put this together 2.5 years ago, I tightened down the 259s again, they're amphenol crimp-ons with good, you know, LMR 400 coax. I didn't use the jumpers that came with the antenna, but I had tightened them down with pliers, but I since have bought plastic jawed pliers, right, that really get a better grip and don't deform the barrel connector. And when I took all the tape and the sill, the 3-amp sill off, by the way, you'll want to invest in some of this, especially at the top here, and then use Scotch 88. Don't scrimp on your tape, obviously. So I put the tape on, and then you put a layer of this on, mainly at the top area, right? And then wrap from the bottom up on your, using the Scotch 88 for the best seal. And I really don't like the way this is set up. I wish it had a skirt here, because I just picture water, you know, pooling down underneath here. And I don't have a wet climate here. So anyway, problem solved. I can tune the antenna now. It's working as you'd expect on 20 meters where the real problem was. And so just a couple of other things I was worried about. I ponied up and bought these, I think they were Bettis strap ties, and then rather than put a bunch of tape everywhere, I used those, and they're holding up great there. They're rock solid everywhere. I'm real happy. And so I strapped the you know, control wire box back down, and good old N4ZZ tilt plate is worth its weight in gold here. Not cheap. The car lock has been working great. Just, you know, one-man show. I can bring this down and work on it, and don't have to bother with anybody. I really like the truss, the boom truss to keep the boom nice and flat. And I know guys will argue against the element trusses, but I'm a fan of those too. We get some snow, heavy snow, and I know they're really not that functional. You know, guys always squawk about water getting in the element tubes if you don't have enough droop on the trombones. But I haven't had a stitch of trouble, come to find out, in 2.5 years with the EHUs. There's only 2 problems I've had. This one, and I was doing some remote 6-meter stuff, and I ended up burning up a ballon in the main EHU. And I'm a little concerned about that having caused some stress on the coax switch. So that's why I replaced the coax switch. So it was either number 1, the coax switch, and the 20, you know, the main driven element jumper, or a combination of both. I'd have to tear the relays apart on the previous coax switch. But another hot tip is get the parts beforehand that you think you're going to need, and it just makes life a heck of a lot easier. This sure beats climbing the tower. The worst part is cranking up, you know, doing the hand tilt crank up, which I guess I could motorize that, but you know, there's a lot of weight out here with the setup here at my house. So all the tie straps working great. Of course, I wrapped, you know, good tape around those so there wouldn't be any chafing there. I took my time putting this thing together, and I'm crazy happy with it. It just performs like you wouldn't believe at 80 feet on 40 meters. Those tail elements on 40, and at 30 meters, it's great too. I don't get the third element because it's not the DB18E, but it's a little less complicated, right, without that third trombone. But that would be nice to be able to reverse 30 meters and bidirectional and all that. But that's the only thing you give up is that one element on 30 meters. That's a lot of dough to get a little more gain on 30. It plays super well on 30 meters too at that height. So again, kind of a shot at the paint job. You can see it looks, I mean, it looks like it did when I painted it. I'm very happy with that. Sweet tubes. I think that's about it, guys. You know, plan on some repairs. What you'd think would be the problem have not been a problem for me as far as the beryllium tapes and the stepper motors and the HU. It's been two other things here in 2.5 years. So I'll have it back up here within the hour and be back on the air, get things cleaned up, and hope this helps somebody out. I mean, I did two things at once, right? I fiddled with the jumper and the coax switch, and I probably should have tested, you know, taken a barrel connector or a bullet and taken the feed line directly into the coax jumper that goes to that main EHU, and that would have proven out the coax switch. So I'm, you know, it's not worth it now. I'm not going to mess with it. I'll check out those relays and either buy new ones and just get that other relay board ready in a state for backup. And now I've got an EHU too. The center one anyway, the trombone EHUs are different on this animal. This is, again, this is not one of their more simple antennas, right? Because you're switching that feed line to any of the three elements. So, all right, 73 for now, and hopefully I don't have to mess with this for you know, a lot of years to come. Bye, NG7M 73.